would you define for us what product market fit is in simple terms?
Product market fit is when your product solves a significant problem for a specific market, that it does it so well or so great that customers will use it, sustain, and will even recommend it to others and eventually even purchase the product.
Are there any misconceptions about product market fit?
So when we're looking at PMF, there's a current conception in the world that once you get there, you are always there. That's absolutely not
Mhm.
true. So product market fit can be attained and dropped.
Can you share some examples of maybe companies that you worked at?
So at GitLab, when I was first hired, I was in charge of introducing their release management capabilities. So when I started meeting with customers that were interested in release management, I started to learn that there were like three things that they really cared about. They really cared about cross-team visibility. They really cared about assets being attached to a specific release. And then they really cared about governance. Once we did that, we started to see a massive amounts of interest in our product. We went from probably 20,000 users a month to over 300,000 users a month in 3 months, 4 months,
Well,
because people were super interested in solving this release pain point that they weren't able to solve inside of a tool before.
Hold up. Before we dive in, let's give a shout out to Appmixer, the game changer in SaaS automation. Appmixer is a no-code platform that helps SaaS companies ship AI agents in their products in days. The way it works is simple. You build agents in Appmixer and deploy them in your product. As a result, your users become far more productive and you gain a competitive edge in the AI race. AI is changing the SaaS industry, bringing both challenges and opportunities. And that's exactly what this podcast is all about, tackling the day-to-day challenges of product management. In each episode, I sit down with product management heroes who face these challenges every day. I ask the questions, they bring the practical answers. Without further ado, let's see who's joining us today.
all right. Hello, everyone. This is Jerry again at PM Talks by Appmixer. And today I'm very happy to welcome Ms. Jackie Porter,
Hello.
uh, Director of Product Management at GitLab. So, welcome, Jackie. Thanks for joining us today. How are you?
Terry, I'm super excited to be here. Once I saw your message in my inbox and I watched some of your prior recordings, I was like, oh, this will be a cool session. So I'm excited to be here.
Okay, thank you. That's great. That's great to hear. Um, so maybe just to start, could you briefly introduce yourself? Tell us a bit more about your career in product development and management.
Yeah, absolutely. So for the past 10 years, I've been working in SaaS product world. I've been program manager, product manager, scrum master, and then of course a product leader across B2B SaaS products with some nuances. Like for example, for the past 5 years, I've been at GitLab, and GitLab offers a B2B SaaS product, but we have a really strong B2C motion with developers, software developers. I would say before that, I did construction management, and I've taken my love of building buildings and tangible objects and have funneled that into building really world class software products. And it's been amazing to be a part of these journeys where I've successfully exited companies or the GitLab's IPO a couple of years ago. Uh, so going from 0 to 1 products, private equity led products, or also scaling mature products is sort of the generalizable trend that I'm seeing my career evolve into.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That sounds exciting. And so today's topic is knowing when product market fit has been hit. So I guess that's one of the topics that you're always looking at once you join a new company. Um, Before we talk about your experience in searching that product market fit for different companies, would you define for us what product market fit is in simple terms?
Yes. Product market fit is when your product solves a significant problem for a specific market, that it does it so well or so great that customers will use it, sustain, and will even recommend it to others and eventually even purchase the product.
That sounds great. So are there any misconceptions about product market fit? Can you share some examples of maybe companies that you worked at? Like if you take a look back, when you joined the company, did that particular company find a product market fit already? And like, did you reach that later? What happened when you joined? What happened after the product market fit has been reached?
Yeah, that's okay. So first tackling the misconceptions part. So when we're looking at PMF, there's a current conception in the world that once you get there, you are always there. That's absolutely not
Mhm.
true. So product market fit can be attained and dropped. It's not permanent. It's dependent on a number of factors, mostly your user base, your market base, but also the economic conditions and even how well your company is growing as a part of the product journey. So when I look back at my career, I had the luxury of being in product companies that were really well loved by their user base. So I was able to see these cases where we were acquiring many companies that already reached product market fit. They're already viable companies and we were connecting them together. So an example would be when I was working at People Admin, that was a human resources technology stack for the K through 12 and eventually K through 24, so a spectrum. So this is like elementary school or primary schools, all the way through higher education, human resource management tools. And what I found in those different roles is that the product market fit was really shown by all of these universities telling other universities how great this tool was and that they needed it in order to drive efficiency for their organization. There was a huge amount of our business driven just from this referral process. Now, alternatively, I've been at other companies where it's a 0 to 1 product, which means nothing exists, and you're having to launch something new into that space. And this would be Spreadfast. So when I was at Spreadfast, this was a social media ingest platform. We were competing with a really saturated space in marketing tools, and we had to ensure that we were adding new functionality to become differentiated. At time of acquisition, that company ended up combining with 3 other different companies to deliver an end-to-end platform because our target market was the enterprise, and the enterprises typically need a platform in order to orchestrate their workflows. So when we're looking at like meeting at PMF and succeeding at PMF, it's really about like how do you sustain business performance and revenue as a result of your product being in market. If we want to like add some examples that other people might relate to, let's think about Netflix. Like Netflix started off as a DVD company, it transitioned to streaming, and now it's transforming the entertainment industry as we know it. That's a great example of like DVDs were cool, people saw them, knew them, but then once they transitioned to this digital format, it was so accessible and people wanted to continue buying it, and now it's a part of life for many people. You turn on Netflix and you watch it almost daily, right? A failure example would be something like Google Plus. I don't know if you remember seeing this on your Google use
Oh, yeah.
case, but every time you use Google, you would get like, oh, your identity as a Google Plus person. And, and I think in like 2020 or 2019, the product ended up getting sunsetted because it wasn't really a compelling reason for people to go from Facebook over to Google Plus. Because they're like,
Mhm.
I don't really need this functionality. I'm not going to engage with somebody in this Google Plus format. Instead, I'm going to use LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, all these other tools that are integrated in my social media experience. Did that help
Hmm.
answer your questions?
Yeah. These are some great examples. I think these are the right ones for everyone to imagine what how can a company that found a product market fit looks like. And Netflix does it really great, I must admit. Now, if we take a look at the, let's say, beginning of the journey, let's assume you entered a new SaaS startup. What are some of the early signs that a product market fit is there? You mentioned how it looks like when the product market fit has been already reached. But what are some of the, like, when you as a product manager take a look at the current situation and you're like, yeah, we're almost there, like some specific things like that you're looking at?
A good example right now. So we have this experiment out there in our GitLab CI tool. So GitLab is a software development tool for developers. And the part of the product that I own is called continuous integration. And this is all the feature sets that a developer would need to use to test, to package, and to really deploy their changes to a customer. We have been working on this functionality that improves the way someone would build specific test jobs or specific steps within their workflow of development verification. And it's been in our product for a couple months, and we've already started to get enterprise customers saying, "I'm using this. When is it going to go to production?" So this is a really great signal that we're hitting the problem, we're solving it, because they are saying, I need this in production now because I want to use it for my production workloads ASAP. So what I mean here is, like, people are actively recommending using this particular setup for their own products, for their own customers as a GitLab user. And there's an interest in shaping what that feature looks like. So this engagement is a really big indicator that we're solving that problem and people want to use it, which is really the definition of PMF, right?
Okay, that sounds great. That basically you can listen to the users, and they're actually saying it right to you, right? That okay,
That's right.
give me that feature, or they refer your product to other people in that sector, as you mentioned, those universities. So that's I'd say this is some qualitative feedback from your users. Are there any let's say quantitative things that you track in your product, like some retention rates or NPS scores? Like, which of these are you regularly implementing? Which are let's say the key things that you always need to have in your product, and be getting back to those?
Yeah. So when you want to start trending your PMF, the data that you're going to look at is really like your monthly recurring revenue. You're even going to look at the retention of that revenue. And the goal would be you're not getting any churn, right? So that would be 100% net retention of revenue, month over month, quarter over quarter, is showing that you're, like, meeting that product market fit. NPS, I think, is a really great survey. This is Net Promoter Score to show that referral motion. There's also metrics like customer effort score, which kind of spans the world of, like, hey, uh, usable product versus, like, getting PMF. But that customer effort score is a survey that allows people to assess how easy it was to complete your task with this product. And what that will help you assess is, like, the quality of which they're able to complete their job with your software. And if you're getting really high CES scores, that's indicating that your product is solving the problem for them, not that they would just recommend people to do it. There's one challenge that you have with, like, these in product surveys like NPS or CSAT or CES is that sometimes there isn't targeting by role. And if you have a platform, you might have 10, 15 different kinds of users that are going to be leveraging your product. And at any which point you're evaluating them in the product, their mood, their job, the task that they try to have might not be satisfied in that moment. So there's a lot of volatility in those surveys.
Mm-hmm.
If you have like a single product and it's very narrow, like an early stage startup, those surveys can be a little bit more illustrative because you have a very limited set of jobs that you're asking people to complete versus like a very mature product with a bunch of different personas in the platform.
Right, right. I also guess that these quantitative um, factors make really sense when you have a lot of customers, like maybe hundreds or thousands, right? Whereas when
Mhm.
you're a little startup just starting, just reach some MVP, then the qualitative feedback from your users talking to them is what you want to do at that point, I guess.
And really, like, you're gonna get high engagement rates as on your way to PMF. So people are actually you're gonna have more people coming straight at you as you're starting to get PMF than you know what to do with as a product manager. That's how, like, that's the texture that I've always had is like, I have a wealth of people that are engaged with this solution, and that's a really great signal that, like, you're getting there and you've even obtained PMF.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So it's like at some point it just starts growing, and you have many users registering and interacting with the application. Um, so all right, so I guess that's the point when you reach the product market fit. Now, what to do next once you've reached product market fit? How do you continue?
Yeah. So this is where like you need to start understanding the next features or aspects of product that need to get invested in order to sustain that PMF. So I would recommend that you add usage instrumentation to the different things that you're adding to the product because then you're able to see like the journey of which people are going through your product and how well they're utilizing each feature set. I would also make sure that you're analyzing different types of support tickets or close loss deal information, or you are assessing like that qualitative information that people may be providing to the company that isn't in a direct feature request. Because, if someone is submitting a support ticket that my SSO is failing, my single sign on is failing, and that's a barrier to entry for your onboarding. So if they've submitted this ticket, you may realize as a product manager, I have significant limitations in my top of funnel that might be impacting my adoption rates. So that's where like it's important as you're scaling to PMF, as you're working to PMF, you're really taking into consideration the holistic experience that a user has when interfacing with your product. I would also say it's important that you start defining your cohorts. So you're collecting all this beautiful data, you're looking at your retention, you're looking at usage patterns. Start defining your cohorts. Start saying what are the characteristics of the people that are using it. Where do they belong inside of a segment, industry, a company size? Are they IC? Are they individual contributors in their organization? Is it a management persona? That kind of information will really help you understand like who's getting value from your solution. And then you can start getting targeted research and experiences to really meet that persona where they're at.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Does it make sense to think about that, like from your desk? Like, I mean, you launch a product, you have some first customers, and now even when you have just one customer from some segment, is it a good time now to take a look at that segment and go after other companies from that segment, or would you recommend to actually have your solution rather like broader focused and not specifically define those segments that you're targeting at the beginning, but then just looking at like what companies are signing up, and then based on some, okay, now I have 10 companies from this particular segment, so now I'm gonna focus on that one, and I will try to dominate that segment.
Yeah. So that's like a strategy question that I think a lot of product leaders and product people end up grappling with. When you're early in PMF, there might not be high signals across specific industry because you might be targeting a specific end user, which is going to exist universally across different roles. So for example, at GitLab, we're targeting developers. There's developers that aren't attached to an organization. There's open source developers. There's professional developers at enterprises, and all of them have the same core tasks, right? They have the same job that they need to complete. But when you start like peeling back the layers of where people want to pay for your product, that's when you start noticing specific, texture and layers of roles that are outside of that core developer journey that will create your product's revenue. So in the early days, as an early stage startup, many companies lean into a feature factory and just start delivering as many features to get the breadth of competitive scope. So typically there's going to be a product that's already existing out there, and they're going to just deliver everything to be able to erode the market share of that competitor. So in terms of like, how do you validate your assumptions and how do you ensure that you're actually focused on the right thing to both delight your user and continue sustaining product market fit, but then also obtain revenue? I found really embracing an experimentation framework like A/B testing, prototyping, early adopters is a great way to identify like the most profitable or the most beneficial segment for you to really invest in. That experimentation allows you to say, hey, like, do I need to put special solution pages for specific sectors? Do I need to make sure that I engage different personas and buyers as a part of this life cycle? But early on, for an early stage startup, that kind of information is often lost because there's already like a market standard for how something should work. So oftentimes they're racing toward that competitive differentiation model rather than like, how do I focus in delighting a specific segment?
I believe that often startups, young companies, fall into the trap that they're looking too much at their competitors, or like they see that okay, that competitor has this thing, and a few leads just mention that okay, they have more of that, or they have that exciting feature that we really need, and so on, and then they stop kind of focusing on their own users. So really the recommendation here is to probably to be as close to your paying users as possible. I guess that's a rule for all the young startups
Yeah.
out there, correct?
Yep. That's how I would say it too.
All right. Great. Now, there's this famous Sean Ellis test that says that how you identify whether you've reached a product market fit is that if 40% of your users are saying that they'd be very disappointed without your product, then this means that you've reached a product market fit. What's your take on that? How relevant is this rule in modern product development?
Well, first I want to take a step back and kind of talk about who Sean Ellis is and why he's important and why this test was created. So Sean Ellis was a marketer at Dropbox, and Dropbox is a notorious product for something that reached product market fit after failing multiple times, and then they finally did one thing, which is improving the syncing aspect, and then they reached product market fit, and they absolutely crushed it in their market. So Sean Ellis was a marketer that was in charge of that positioning and in charge of that competitive research. And what he created is this instrument or survey to measure the signal of when product market fit has been met. And as you mentioned, his rule was if 40% of the respondents reply very disappointed if the product went away, that's a high signal that you're reaching PMF or that you've reached PMF. A couple of caveats about this survey. It requires you to really have the user that's using your product responding to the survey, which I know sounds like common sense, but
It's always hard.
in a platform, in a platform, when you have 15 different kinds of users in it, if this is an end product experience, then that person may not actually be using your core workflow, and that could really skew your results. And then the other thing is that it requires a specific number of respondents to really get statistically significant findings or information. So if you have 40% of 10 people that would say very disappointed, that's really not substantial enough to say that this product is reaching product market fit. Okay. So to your other question, like, what's my hot take on Sean Ellis test? I think it's a cool signal if it's used in conjunction with other PMF metrics that actually track retention, revenue, and product usage. So this measurement that Sean has is really just an opinion-based, sentiment-based survey. It doesn't measure revenue, doesn't measure usage. And as a result, like in isolation, it's not particularly useful. So the way that I would say it being relevant to like modern product development is if you're an early stage startup, if you have very engaged core users that you know, and you can target those users effectively with the survey. And it can be helpful for those early stage startups to identify those user segments, but also prioritize based off of user needs.
So it's always good to ask, but again, probably that framework was created that after Dropbox experienced some success, and we're talking like thousands and tens of thousands users probably and more. Okay, let's talk further about some challenges in identifying product market fit. Are there some common mistakes product teams make in thinking they've achieved product market fit prematurely?
Oh yeah. So sometimes product managers will instrument usage, and they think what they've instrumented is an indication of adoption. But what they've really instrumented is a vanity metric for counting absolute usage or consumption of a feature. So what that means is if you have very high spikes of usage initially, like in the first 2-3 months of launching, that is great for user enthusiasm, but it's not necessarily like a broader market demand, right? Because sometimes like downloads or counts or page views are just a signal of interest. You have awareness, that awareness funnel is getting engaged. What you need to make sure that you're doing is like assessing that traction. Okay. So another kind of mistake is like if you're getting mentioned in, the news, or you're getting mentioned in like social media, or you go viral for a moment, that's like a great, again, awareness, top of funnel kind of event, but it doesn't necessarily signal that product market fit has been met or sustained. And I think continuing to focus on these like absolute counts or vanity metrics doesn't really tell you that your product is adding value for a user or solving the user's problem. It's just saying that someone is engaging with your product.
Okay, so beware of these vanity metrics. So you don't take them into account at all, or are they just some signals, or like do they have any space in discussions about whether the product market fit has been reached? Like I mean the things like you mentioned, like downloads or signups or page visits, things like that.
I would say it's good to have a comprehensive usage library. And if you're limited on what you can instrument, something is better than nothing. But really, in order to assess product market fit, you want to focus on like sustained usage over time, or how many people are abandoning your product, or as soon as a new version has been published by your product, how fast does it take for people to start consuming it? So those are like metrics that really show time to value and show uptake of your product. looking at just absolute accounts and emails or click-throughs or page views, even signups can be really can be really misleading, especially in this world where we have AI agents coming to the forefront. There's lots of bot accounts. Those can generate more traffic than legitimate usage. So it's important, like as a product manager, understanding the landscape of how your product is interacted with these non-human users, right? So I would
I
say
see.
if
I
you
see.
have, again, I would use them if I don't have any other way to instrument like engagement. But otherwise, you should prioritize instrumenting things that actually track consumption, usage, and sustain engagement over time.
Okay. Now, I think what the answer is, but have you ever seen some product that its first version achieved product market fit?
Their first version achieved product market fit. Oh, wow. I haven't really looked at like Apple's journey because I feel like Apple is something that landed even with their iMacs in the education sector, right? So they had, you know, MacBook and computer fit inside of the education sector, which could show that they did attain product market fit. But then when they started to like branch out, they're getting their lunch eaten by like Microsoft and other computer providers. And then they pivoted by really focusing on, mobile devices and music devices and individual devices with their Think Differently campaign. So that's like a case where arguably they could say that they attained product market fit in the education sector with their devices, but then they pivoted when they went broader and bigger to B2C products, right? On the flip side, like how often are we seeing PMF just like fail in market with people's first versions? I think that's like the majority of products. The majority of products start their journey with one thing and then they have to pivot. I mean, like take like Slack, for example. Slack is a messaging tool that people use globally everywhere. But I think it started off as like a gaming company. Their first idea didn't resonate, but then people started showing interest of their internal messaging tool, and then they started to commoditize that and sell that. Um, you know, I think Instagram and Twitter are also examples where they started as one product and they evolved into another. Those are all kind of like there seems to be more pivot points of products' beginning journey than their end journey.
Okay. We talked about losing product market fit after reaching it. You mentioned that market dynamics or economic conditions can influence having or not having product market fit. How exactly? Again, can you share some examples when you've seen that happening?
Yeah. Take a look at all the companies that had to close when COVID hit. When the pandemic hit, a lot of companies went out of business.
Mhm.
A lot of companies fell under. A lot of like startups that were just funded at the end of 2019 ended up not making it, right? That's a really great
Mm.
event to show like even if you were having really great tailwinds prior to the pandemic, just the inability of companies being certain about their economic future meant they're clamping down on budgets. And when there's a clamp down on budget, typically there is less risk to be taken on new products with unvalidated outcomes. So, when you're looking at like specific initiatives to take advantage of a downturn in the market, products that show cost efficiency, cost savings, consolidation tend to resonate more. And you'll see companies reach product market fit in a downturn if they generate that ROI for a customer. But we saw in the pandemic that didn't happen for a lot of companies and they ended up closing shop. When we think about like general market dynamics, look at what's happening with AI right now, right? So like AI companies are a dime a dozen. They're all reaching product market fit because there's this promise of driving more high quality results with less. And that's a really attractive thing for many companies, but even many individuals, right? Many people want to do more with less. So we see that those kinds of companies reaching PMF faster because they deliver on that specific user need and problem.
All right. Let's take a look now at some tools and strategies for testing product market fit. We mentioned already some. So there are some user interviews and feedback, quantitative tools. How do you at GitLab, or like what are the things that you recommend for collecting actionable feedback from early adopters?
Great question. So GitLab is unique in that we have both a self-managed installation that a customer will host and a SaaS offering. So as a result of that split distribution, we have like a framework for instrumenting usage tracking that will be relevant across both tools. And typically it's events that are tracked in Snowplow and Redis to track that user engagement. And then it's dumped into a database, which then people can then layer Tableau visualizations on top of. This is actually really time consuming and takes a lot of work. And it also makes it really hard to do other things that would be product led growth that you'd want to do from like a product led growth motion. So in other companies, I've had Amplitude and Pento in the SaaS solutions that were used for tracking those journeys, but also the consumption of the product. And then I've also used Segment to actually collect and scrape all of those data and put it into a database or data store. And then in order to like analyze that data, sometimes you need to create, specific SQL queries or visualizations in Tableau. Now, from like a survey collection perspective and from a qualitative data analysis perspective, I really like using Qualtrics and I really like using Dovetail. So Qualtrics is a survey tool that allows a lot of robust, ways of measuring and analyzing qualitative survey data and quantitative survey data, which is really great. And then Dovetail is a user research platform where you can create like templates for interviews. You can drop in recordings and it can transcribe your interviews. And then you can tag insights across these interviews to generate themes. So those are all tools that I would definitely recommend using as a part of your like, how do you identify and assess product market fit?
And looking specifically at some early adopters, again, imagine you just joined a new company, 5 people. They have some first customers. What would be the first thing? Let's say, they have 10 customers. What was the first thing you would do? And out of those tools that you mentioned, would you implement any of these at that stage?
Yeah, for sure. So if you have the technical architecture to support something like Amplitude or Pendo, that will save you so much time in terms of instrumentation sharing your usage data. So start with that in mind and think and like intentionally choose how you want to track usage in your product. And those are the two that I would definitely evaluate and consider if that would fit in your product. And then it's great if you can consolidate your findings from qualitative feedback in a single place. Whether you want to use Dovetail or whether you want to use Google Docs in a Google Drive, totally up to you. But creating your information architecture for how you want to share insights across customer interviews in a secure and anonymized way is really great, because you don't necessarily want to like violate GDPR by storing that data on people's like local machines. So it's great to have like a SaaS tool for that, because of course, as you start to scale PMF, when you hit PMF, you might be getting hundreds of users at your door. So it's so much easier to like track that in a scaled, consolidated way and then share that information across teams.
I see. Yeah, it's better to be prepared for that
That's
time
right.
when you've hit the product market fit and people start coming.
Yes.
Okay. Um, let's talk about minimum viable product. What role do MVPs play in testing for PMF?
Ah. So I think, well, let's define what an MVP is. An MVP is the minimal set of product that can be set out to solve a customer problem. So when we're thinking about what PMF is you have successfully solved that problem. So what MVP allows you to do, it allows you to incrementally measure how well you're solving people's problems. And you can do it very quickly and cheaply and efficiently before you need to build out an end-to-end complete system. Because it's much easier when you're early on in the journey to put something out there and get reactions than it is to design a whole solution, ship a whole solution, and then learn that that's not meeting your needs. So an MVP is literally that critical path of solving a customer's problem that you can get out into market that adds value.
Um, do you have some examples when you were testing for some MVP and it evolved into a product that had a clear market fit then? Did you?
Sure. So at GitLab, when I was first hired, I was in charge of introducing their release management capabilities. And when I joined, we had probably like three things that were categorized as release management. We had like a commit tag, which is the process by which a developer makes a change, then tags it to show that this is something that I want to move forward in terms of a version for software. And then we had, I think that was actually it. I lied. So when I started meeting with customers that were interested in release management, I started to learn that there were like three things that they really cared about. They really cared about cross-team visibility. They really cared about assets being attached to a specific release. And then they really cared about governance. So what I was able to then prioritize out of that conversation were very quick wins. Like, can we create a page where people can see all of their releases? Can we allow people to upload arbitrary artifacts to that release object? And then can we put permissions around it so people can't just create releases all willy-nilly? Once we did that, we started to see a massive amounts of interest in our product. We went from probably 20,000 users a month to over 300,000 users a month in 3 months, 4 months,
Wow.
because people were super interested in solving this release pain point that they weren't able to solve inside of a tool before. Or they had to pay for a separate tool rather than a single tool they were already paying for. So that was a really great signal that like we started to just scale our monthly active users in less than a year because we started to solve the pain points of visibility, sharing, and permissions.
That's great. That's great story. You said 20,000 to 300,000 in a month.
Yeah. And no, in 3 months,
Oh wow.
over a quarter.
Oh, okay, but still, that's exciting. Um, and okay, so then some growing pains start to occur, I guess. How can you avoid such growing pains? Like, how do you? We already discussed that a bit, but let's get back to that
Yeah.
for a moment. After that product market fit has been hit, but now you have like, instead of 20,000 users in 1 month, after 3 months you have 300,000 users. Like, there's a lot of things that need to change, I guess, and you will find some things that are not working. And we also talked about that the product market fit can be easily lost. So can you share some more tips on continuously adapting to customer needs and maintaining relevance?
Well, I'll take a step back a little bit and kind of talk about something that is sometimes at odds with customer relevance. And this is like preparing for growth technically can be a surprise. So there's times where you have to really think about like, what are you targeting in terms of your reference architecture for your product? Is your scale going to be 1 million users, 2 million users, 3 million, 4 billion users? What is your user scale? And that will help you really frame your minimal requirements in order to like support that demand long term. Because what's awful is when you start reaching product market fit and you do that 3x growth every quarter and your system starts falling down because you didn't design for that concurrent user workload or for that scale. So there is a point in time where like if you're building scalable processes and reference architectures for where you want to take the product, where your product is going to be in the future, you're able to really invest in that customer success early, right? Because then you can make sure that you're either supporting concurrent user workload or enterprise workloads, depending on where you're trying to take your product. And this might not be relevant for everyone. Maybe my bias of B2B product is really hitting home in this conversation, but in every company I've worked with, we have hit that inflection point where our systems were no longer able to sustain the growth at which we were onboarding users. And that's a terrible place to be because you have a backlog of users that are looking to use your product, and your product quickly becomes unusable, and that's how you lose your product market fit, right? Your product is no longer usable by your users. So that's one thing to make sure that like to keep in mind as you're scaling and as you start to think about product market fit. If you are getting early sustained signals of usage, get with your technical architects and start to understand, is your system built for that, and evaluate what needs to be done for that. So customer relevance, like we talked about making sure that you're engaging with customers continuously. So I personally like to have like a board of director companies that are in my continuous feedback circle. So if I have a particular flavor or profile of user and a flavor profile of company that I'm targeting, I would want to curate a series of those customers that I can continuously validate my direction and my prototypes with. And that advisory board, that board of directors of companies and users is pivotal in like defining where your product eventually goes. So that way you're ensuring like your features are validated, your direction's validated, and you are meeting competitive demands for your particular target customer. Then lastly, I would make sure that you're like monitoring what analysts are saying about your market. So there's Forrester and Gartner and the Magic Quadrant and the Wave, and all of these things help signal like what are the best tools in your segment, and like how can you be proactive in managing your brand and managing what your tool does in market.
Okay. Thank you for sharing these tips. To close this discussion about product market fit, are there some final advices that you would give to product managers or entrepreneurs trying to achieve product market fit?
Yeah, I would say focus on solving real problems that your customers are facing. Listen to what your customers are saying, and especially listen to the people that are paying early. Don't spend too much time building a perfect solution. Get something out there, get your feedback, and iterate on it. And then lastly, don't be subject to sunk costs. It's so hard sometimes to like look at the product that you've built and be afraid to like pivot it or change it. But sometimes if you're really trying to scale and you're really trying to reach that escape velocity, you may have to commit to pivot and redo everything you've already done. And that could feel like a waste of money. But sometimes, like if you put $100,000 in and you make $1 million at the end of the year, it's totally worth it. But sometimes if you just keep focusing on that $100,000 you put in, you may never reach that $100 million at the end of the year. Right.
That's there are some great final recommendations, and would you also share some resources or frameworks that you recommend specifically about product market fit, or even other books and tools or blogs that you like generically from product management territory?
Sure. So there's a couple books that I read year over year. Like I make it a commitment to just reread these books. One of them is Innovator's Dilemma. And this allows you to kind of think as you're reaching where your product is going to drive value for customers, like how do you balance that with like adoption metrics and all of these things. So Innovator's Dilemma is one that I read and reread. The Lean Startup is a perfect idea of like PMF in a bottle, like how you think about PMF, how you think about growing your business. So that's a really good one. Jeffrey Moore, in general, is a fantastic author around this business strategy space. And he did a book called Crossing the Chasm. And that's really about like how you scale your business, how you reach product market fit, how you go into the next level for your business. So I would say that those are probably like literature that I would focus on. And then something that I had used in the past as some of my company, like my private equity companies that I was working with, is the Y Combinator Startup School. So this is really just like a bunch of resources for startups. I'm not sure if it's like as relevant now for people, but it was something that I saw that was helpful for me a few years back when we were acquiring a lot of companies and rapidly moving toward new product fit and product market fit. Yeah.
Yeah,
AI is
I
also
love this.
changing the game. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, yeah, I just wanted to mention Y Combinator as well. That's they still produce some great content. I really like watching their videos about all sorts of things like product management and startups in general. I think that's a great resource. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. But you wanted to mention something
Oh,
else? I
yeah.
just interrupted.
No, you're fine. So I would say, ChatGPT, Claude AI in general, they're all changing the game with how you think about product management. And I think they could be a good resource, of course, with validation of what they're pulling in. But as you're starting to think about like ideas about your use cases and your customers and your personas, and like you can always iterate with those AI assistants to say, like, hey, what have other companies done to reach product market fit in this segment and in this business? And it helps broaden your awareness of like prior art that's already been done. Is it relevant for your area? And things that you can try without making the mistake of having to mess up first. So that's also a good resource just to think about like using in your back pocket as somebody who is looking for new ways to think about solving problems for customers.
Yeah, ChatGPT is definitely a great consultant for $20 per month, right?
That's right.
Um, okay, cool. Let's take a look at those favorite fives that I asked to everybody in this podcast. So the first one is, what's your number one challenge at work?
User and customer journeys. So these are two different things. Like how a user gets started on your product is different than how a buyer is going to purchase your product. But you have to understand both of them, and getting that right mix and prioritization across those different journeys is hard. It's just hard. And that's what I struggle with most in my day job.
If you could choose one key metric, the North Star that defines your success as a product leader, what would it be?
This is going to sound so transactional, but like ultimately product leaders are here to make money for a business. So I really feel like a product leader's ability to manage a P&L and X revenue over a time period is really the litmus test of like a successful product leader.
Okay. The third one, how do you collect feedback from your customers? What processes and tools do you use for that? I think we already mentioned that. I think we can skip that one. No,
Sure.
build versus buy. How do you decide?
Depends on the company and the growth goals. So if you're at a company that's really prioritizing rule of 40, your acquisition budget may not be as rich or as expansive as like a private equities bucket of money that's just looking at you to grow as fast as possible and take as much market share as possible. So if you're at a company that really values organic growth and the platform experience, it might be cheaper for you to build it almost every time. Because to find a tool that matches your tech stack, your language, your experience, it's going to take an integration cost, and it's going to take time to integrate that experience. It might take the same amount of time just putting your own engineers on it. If you are literally prioritizing the fastest growth possible, snapping up every company in trouble in your segment is going to be one sure way to do it. So that's where like the build is not necessarily going to be great because it takes time to build organically. But if you have the bucket of money to buy and snap up all of these companies in distress to accelerate your goal, then that's definitely a strategy.
And the final one, what role do integrations with third-party products play in your product?
You know, enterprise B2B companies bring their tools with them. You know, they expect you to be able to plug and play with their own systems because there's so much business logic around what they do. And the cost to consolidate or change products is prohibitively high for many of these companies. So at GitLab, we offer and we intentionally integrate with several solutions to make sure that the enterprise adoption journey is super successful. And at other companies that I've worked with, a wide developer kit, open APIs, and allowing people to publicly develop against APIs was super critical because that's just the game you have to play with enterprise B2B.
So very important. Okay. So final thing, can you share where listeners can find you? Where are you most active? Where is it worth following you?
Sure. So I'm on LinkedIn. I don't really do Twitter or Instagram or anything like that. So if you want to find me on LinkedIn, that's where I am. It's Jacqueline Porter. That's my like little end of my URL. I look forward to connecting with y'all.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Jackie, for being our guest for this episode on knowing when product market fit has been hit. Good luck to you, and yeah, thank you once again for joining. Take care.
Thank you, Jerry.